Hare Krishna. So yesterday was the appearance day of Srila Narottama Das Thakur, and I was hoping that we will be covering each Vaishnava appearance and disappearance, Vaishnava Acharya's appearance, disappearance on this channel, and I missed the date yesterday, so I'll do the recording today and do the reading from Narottama Vilasa about the pastimes of Srila Narottama Das Thakur, his appearance, and I'll try to be more conscious of the calendar in the future so that the recording will come on the day with your blessings. So with this out of the way, let's get into the nectar. Srila Narottama Das Thakur is one of the greatest Vaishnava Acharyas. So many songs we sing, which basically encapsulate Vaishnava Siddhanta. Of course, Guru Puja that we sing every day is written by him. And Srila Gauranga Maharaj said once, it's a famous anecdote, when somebody asked him what it means to be, what it takes to become Krishna conscious, he said it takes 2 paisa. And then he commented, or he gave explanation what he meant. He said, for this 2 paisa you can buy 2 books by Srila Narottama Das Thakur, Prarthana and Prema Bhakti Chandrika, and by reading these prayers, singing these prayers, or the entire Siddhanta of the Gaudiya Vaishnava, entire Gaudiya Vaishnava Siddhanta would be revealed, and one can become Krishna conscious. Anyway, so let's get into the glorification and the life story of Narottama Das Thakur. Om Agyanti Mirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Guru Dinatarnam Shri Chaitanya Manabhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupah Kadamahyam Dadaji Sva Padantikam Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Sarasvati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashitya Deshtarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we are reading from Narottama Vilasa by Narharidas, and we will not read exactly from the beginning, because in the beginning it describes the glories of Narottama Das Thakur's guru, Srila Lokanath Goswami, and just slightly one second. Yeah, slightly at the end of the first Vilasa. One day, while Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was dancing with his associates during Sankirtana, he suddenly looked in the direction of Sri Keturi village. A peculiar look appeared on his face. Tears welled up in his eyes, and he cried out the name Narottam again and again. The ocean of mercy, Nityananda Rai, shouted in joy, and Haridas, Vakreshvara, and others were inexplicable filled with happiness, or inexplicably, I guess. Witnessing the unusual behavior of the Lord, the devotees began talking among themselves. Prabhu is repeatedly calling out the name of someone called Narottama. It seems that this Narottama is extremely dear to the Lord. Perhaps he is about to take birth soon. Or who is that fortunate man who will have such a son? The woman who bears him within her womb is most fortunate lady in the world. Obviously, the Lord has plans for this Narottama to fulfill his mission. We sure know that he had plans, right? Narottama, Dasa, Thakura, Yamananda Pandit, and Srinivasa Acharya was three of the great second wave devotees after Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates have left, and they were original book distributors, and they propagated the teachings of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu far and wide. Anyway, back to the text. In this way, the rumors of the appearance of Narottama spread far and wide. Far and wide. A similar event took place again when Mahaprabhu was traveling to Nilachal. Suddenly, he cried out the name of Srinivas, unclear. These topics became unclear. It's something in parentheses here. I'm not sure what was unclear, but these topics became known to all, and everyone waited eagerly, anticipated the appearance of Narottama. All listeners, please hear attentively as Narahari Dasa narrates Narottama Vilasa. So this is the end of first Vilasa. The second Vilasa. All glories to Sri Gaurachandra, Nityananda Prabhu, and all the devotees of Mahaprabhu. Please bestow your mercy upon this poor, fallen, conditioned soul. All glories to those who hear the nectar of this Narottama Vilasa. Kindly listen patiently to my narration. When wheel of time turned, until finally, on the 6th hour of the full moon day in the month of Magha, that's what happened yesterday, right? When all auspicious signs were visible, Narottama Das took birth to fulfill the mission of the Lord. His mother, radiant with beauty, wept joyfully as she lovingly gazed at the charming face of her son. An unearthly effulgence suddenly illuminated the entire delivery room, and happiness swelled in the hearts of everyone present. From that moment, the village of Sri Keturi became an auspicious place. Their residents suddenly felt purified, as if cleansed of all misgivings. They trembled with ecstatic emotions, tears filled their eyes, and they spontaneously chanted the holy name with devotion. They rushed to the house of Krishnananda, carrying all kinds of gifts for the newborn child. The delighted Datta Mahashaya warmly welcomed them all without taking his eyes off the face of his son for a second, while Krishnananda's exalted father distributed charity profusely to the singers, musicians, and others present for the protection of his grandson. There was no woman in the world as fortunate as Narottama's mother, Narayani. By the Lord's grace, she was granted the eyes to see Gauranga, Nityananda, and Advaita dancing ecstatically within her own home. So, Gauranga, Nityananda, and Advaita, they came when Narottama Das was born, and they were dancing in the house on his parental house, and his mother Narayani could see them. Narayani wept jubilantly as her son began to grow like the moon. Similarly, Krishnananda's pleasure knew no bounds as he constantly stared at the jewel-like face of his son. Grateful for his good fortune, he fed the brahmanas daily. At the appropriate time, on the auspicious day, Krishnananda arranged for the ceremony of offering rice to his son. The astrologer present on the joyful occasion noted all the auspicious signs upon child's body and predicted that the boy would be an illustrious person. This baby will be greatest of men, therefore he should be called Narottama, which literally means the greatest of men. The festivities went on happily until Krishnananda tried to feed his son the rice. To everyone's dismay, the child refused to eat Although they coaxed him again and again, the boy repeatedly turned his head away, refusing to eat. The festive atmosphere was replaced with anxiety, and everyone looked at each other nervously, not knowing what to do. The thoughtful astrologer, however, reassured everyone, "Don't worry, this baby will not accept food unless it has first been offered to Lord Vishnu." Who of us have such children, right? Any parents, even Krishna consciousness, you give children the rice, they would eat it. Of course, we never give them rice which is not offered to Krishna, so maybe they would have rejected, but that's what happened. Narottama Das Thakur has rejected the rice because it was not offered to Lord Vishnu. Thus the rice was offered to Lord Vishnu, then again offered to the child. To everyone's relief, the child happily devoured it. From that day on, realizing the value of prasad, the king ordered, "Only food which has been offered to Krishna should be given to my son," although the worship of Krishna was customary in their family. From the time of Narottama's birth, everyone became much more attentive to the service of the Lord. After a few years, Narottama began his studies and soon proved to be a genius. Within a short time, he became a scholar of all subjects. The teachers used to comment, "How is it possible that this boy can learn so quickly? Do you think he is an incarnation of God?" He was an adorable boy and endeared himself to everyone. Soon, he was the talk of the town. Just one glance at Narottama is sufficient to cool my mind and chase away all miseries. From every angle of vision, the prince is beautiful. I have never seen such a gorgeous boy. In this way, Krishnananda's son was glorified throughout the town. Krishnananda was happy simply to gaze upon his son, but as the time passed, he began to think, "My son is capable. In all respects, he must be married soon. I am getting old and should follow the path of my father. It is time to be relieved of my kingly duties." Thus he consulted with the wise Kayasthas to find a suitable bride for his son. Meanwhile, Narottama was lost in the ecstasy of love for Krishna. With eyes full of tears, he joyfully worshipped the Lord privately, oblivious to everything else. In this way, he lost all taste for mundane pleasures and could not bear to hear even the topics related to royal pleasures and properties. Aware of their son's growing apathy for material life, Krishnananda and Narayani were filled with anxiety and could think of nothing else. Finally, they decided to appoint someone to constantly watch over their son, but still they were unable to find peace of mind. The story of Narottama Das Thakur and in this situation remind very much of what was happening with Raghunath Das, right? Later Raghunath Das Goswami. Same, living in tremendously opulent family and having complete apathy for material life. So by reading these, by hearing these stories, I sincerely hope that I will also develop the apathy for material life. Maybe you also will. I mean, some people need to be careful what they wish for. But ultimately, it is our goal, right? To lose all interest in material life and be fully absorbed 24/7 in hearing and chanting Krishna and speaking with others and sharing Krishna with others. This is our goal. And it seemed to be not practical at times, especially for the householders who has families, to take care of the families and need to put the bread on the table, need to work and do this and that. But we should never think that this is not what is desired. If we could get there, we should not shy away. Unfortunately, only the most fortunate could go there and be like that. And still, in some cases, still execute their duties, right? But lose all taste. So, not that we need to cultivate taste for material life, for wealth, for position, for, material stability and so on and so forth. This is not something which we need to aspire for at all. If we need to do it as a sense of duty, it's great. But as of now, unfortunately, this is something which for most of us may be an attractive part of life. Hearing, however, hearing enough about our illustrious Vaishnava acharyas and how they rejected everything which the world had to offer to them. In Narottama, Dasa, Dasa Goswami, and there are so many other examples, help to cleanse our heart and praying for their mercy. And we might hope to slowly, or maybe fast, who knows, the mercy is inconceivable, but get where they are, love, aspiring only to please Krishna, to serve Krishna, and losing all the interest in everything else. Of course, for people outside of Krishna consciousness, this seems to be, might sound too fanatic or, too extreme. And even for some devotees in Krishna consciousness, it might sound too extreme. And it would be unfortunate. Of course, we should not be fanatical. We should not prematurely renounce. We should not cast away and run away from our duties when we are not ready to do that. Srila Prabhupada remained householder and providing for his family for a long time until it was time for him to move on and accept renounced order of life. Anyway, just some thoughts. Narottama's home became a prison for him, and he longed to be free. Although he said nothing, he was constantly waiting for the opportunity to leave home. Every day, he secretly pleaded desperately for the Lord's help. His body became covered with dust as he rolled on the ground, crying, raising his arms in the air and begged pitifully, "O Gauranga, Nitai, Advaita, my lords, please save me from this hell." At that time, the news of Lord Gauranga's glories was spreading throughout the world. Narottama's only solace was when he received some word of the Lord's pastimes. There was one aged Brahmana in Sriketuri named Krishnadas. He was a genuine servant of Lord Krishna and loved Narottama deeply. He could not let a single day pass without seeing Narottama. That Brahmana Krishnadas was so powerful by dint of his devotion that no one dared disobey him. Early after completing his worship of Krishna, Krishnadas would visit Narottama. Narottama welcomed him with wholehearted enthusiasm, humbly falling prostrate at his feet. Offering him a seat, he would then eagerly inquire about Lord Chaitanya and his associates. Krishnadas happily narrated the pastimes of the Lord in the three parts, Adi, Madhya, and Antya. He went on to glorify the transcendental activities of Nityananda and Advaita with such emotion that even wood or stone would melt upon hearing his devotional narration. He explained the life histories of Pandit Gadadhara, Pandit Srivasa, Vakreshvara, Svarupa, Murari, Haridas, Naraharidasa, Gauridasa, Gadadhar, Vashu Ghosh, Mukunda, Sanjaya, Damodara, Kashishvara, Shri Paramananda Bhattacharya, Krishnadasa Brahmachari, Lokanath Varya, Sanatana Rupa, Shri Gopala Raghunatha Bhatta, Shri Jiva, Subudhi Mishra, Raghava, Krishna Pandit, and others. He then narrated the story of Srinivasacharya's birth. Krishnadas took hold of Narottama's hand and tearfully said, "O Narottama, how can I describe the wonderful qualities of Srinivas? In his youth, he was renowned as a great scholar and the embodiment of love and devotion. When he left for Nilachal to meet Sri Chaitanya, along the way he received the stunning news that the Lord has disappeared from this world. He was devastated and immediately fell unconscious. Only due to the wish of the Lord did life remain within his body." The glories of the Lord's devotees are described by Kavi Karnapura in Gunalesha Shuchakam. Glory to Srila Srinivas Prabhu, the embodiment of mercy, who was born in Rari Brahman family in Ganteshwari. In his childhood, he conquered the world by his scholastic genius. Upon hearing about Lord Chaitanya, Srinivas rushed to Nilachal to see the Lord. Glory to Srinivas Prabhu, who fell unconscious on the road to Nilachal. Upon hearing of Sri Mahaprabhu's disappearance, after regaining consciousness, he frantically cut his own beautiful hair, and so doing hurt his forehead. Then he continued on to Purushottama, remembering the lotus feet of Mahaprabhu. In the dream, Lord Chaitanya appeared before Srinivasa, encouraging him to go to Nilachal. Upon seeing Srinivasa, everyone there shed tears. Gadadhar, Vakreshwara Pandit, and others welcomed him into their association. Showering their mercy upon him, they ordered him to go to Vrindavan. Srinivasa first took darshan of Sri Jagannatha and then started for Gauda via Srikhanda. After reaching Gauda, he again returned to Nilachala via Srikhanda, but along the way, he heard that Gadadhar Pandit Goswami had disappeared from the world. Devastated, Srinivasa turned around and headed back toward Gauda, looking like a man on the verge of death. After traveling some time, he lay down and fell asleep. In his dream, Sri Pandit Goswami appeared before Srinivasa and lovingly consoled him. When he awoke in the morning, his mind was still extremely perturbed, yet he continued on towards Gauda. Along the road, he met one of the residents of Gauda, who informed Srinivasa about the disappearance of Prabhu Nityananda and Advaita. Again, Srinivasa fell unconscious as despair. When he came back to consciousness, he immediately decided to commit suicide and began building a fire to throw himself into. However, Nityananda and Advaita Prabhu suddenly appeared before Srinivasa. They quickly pacified him and ordered him to go to Vrindavan. In the morning, Srinivasa continued to Gauda. In Srikhanda, he met Narahari and Sri Raghunandana and bowed to their feet. This is described by Kavi Karnapura in Gunalesha Suchakam. All glory to Srila Srinivasa Prabhu, who went to Srikhanda and bowed before Narahari Sarakara Thakura, the dearmost associate of Sri Chaitanya Chandra. Being ordered by Narahari, Srinivasa also sought the favor of Yadunandan. When Srinivasa arrived in Navadvip, he was overwhelmed with astonishment to see the Supreme Lord Gauranga and his associate sporting happily there. Srinivasa had been granted the eyes to see this wonderful scene. Actually, everyone in Navadvip was floated in an ocean of sorrow. Srinivasa eagerly went to the house of Prabhu, where Vishnupriya Devi bestowed her mercy upon him. Dasa, Gadadhara, Srinivasa, and others also welcomed Srinivasa with tears of love in their eyes. From there, Srinivasa went to Shantipur to see Sita Devi. Who can describe the love and reciprocation he received from her? In ecstatic trance, he traveled to Kardana, where Sri Janava and Vasudha greeted him with great affection. He then went, so Sri Janava and Vasudha were the wives of Sri Nityananda Prabhu. He went to Kanakula to receive the blessings of Sri Abhiram and his wife Malini Devi. He then returned to Srikhanda and met Sri Narahari Thakur, who bestowed his mercy upon him and again advised him to go to Vraja. With great affection, Sri Raghunandana gave Srinivasa complete instruction for his journey to Vrindavan. Srinivasa went back to Yajagram to visit his mother and after consoling her, started off alone for Vrajapura. After hearing this story, spontaneous love for Srinivasa arose within the heart of Narottama, floating in the river of tears. Narottama thought, when shall I get the company of Srinivasa? Who can understand Narottama's state of mind? Daily he listened attentively to the stories of Prabhu and his devotees, and cursed himself for not having attained their association. His mind was always disturbed. He could not eat, nor could he sleep at night. One day, due to the desire of the Lord, Narottama fell asleep, and in his dream he saw Gauranga. His splendid beauty could not be compared to gold, lightning, or anything else in this world. The beautiful curling hair hanging down his back could turn the mind of even the most virtuous women. His earrings shone brightly, and his lotus eyes were the trap of Cupid. His smiling face could easily defeat the effulgence of the moon, and the beautiful tilak on his forehead could capture one's breath. His graceful hands swept down to his knees, and how broad his chest was. Beautiful jeweled garlands hung around his conch-like neck, and his deep navel was finely shaped. His thin waist defeated even the lion. His knees looked like toppled banana trees, and his feet were more attractive than lotuses. How gorgeous was his threefold lion cloth! Observing the beauty of Prabhu, Narottama shed tears of love and fell on the feet of the Lord. Placing his fist on Narottama's head, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said sweetly, "O Narottama, look at me. I cannot bear your tears. Don't worry, go straight to Vrindavan. There you will be initiated by my dear devotee Lokanath. He will happily pour the nectar of the Mahamantra into your ears. I have many plants which are to be served by you." Narottama's sleep was then broken. Narottama could not bear Prabhu's disappearance, and he rolled on the ground in disappointment. Thus again, due to the Lord's wish, Narottama fell asleep. In his dream, he saw Lord Chaitanya on the bank of the Ganges in Navadvip. He was enjoying his pastimes along with Nityananda, Advaita, Gadadhara, Srivasa, Svarupa, Narahari, Haridasa, Vakreshvara, Mukunda, Murari, Govinda, Madhava, Vasugor, Shuklambara, Gauridasa, Sri Sanjaya, Damadara, Mahesha, Shankara, and Yadu Acharya. All of them surrounded Gauranga as they engaged in Sankirtana, while the people of Navadvip witnessed their divine pastimes. Eager to inspect this beautiful scene, even Brahma, Shiva, and other demigods and goddesses mingled with the crowd in disguise. Even the animals and birds were charmed. Those who were born blind were suddenly able to see and rushed to observe the extraordinary Sankirtana performance. Seeing this wonderful fun, Narottama wept with joy. On seeing Narottama, Prabhu Gaurachandra emotionally took him to his bosom and soaked Narottama with his tears. Narottama fell on Prabhu's feet, and the Lord affectionately lifted him from the ground and put him in the care of Nityananda and Advaita. He also helped Narottama to obtain the mercy of his associates, and they all advised Narottama to go to Vrindavan. Narottama was unable to control his emotions. Observing the beauty of Nityananda, Narottama fell on his feet, and Nityananda put his feet on Narottama's head, blessing him with unconditional love for Sri Gauranga. Then advised him to go to Vrindavan. Upon seeing the beauty of Advaita, Narottama fell at his feet, who at once lifted Narottama and placed him at the lotus feet of Gauranga. He bowed to the feet of Gadadhara, Srivasa, and others who also embraced Narottama one by one. Narottama bathed in tears of everyone. All of them encouraged Narottama to go to Vrindavan. Narottama then woke up, and it was morning. He consoled himself and finished his daily morning duties. He wept with joy as he began to see many auspicious signs indicating good fortune. In anticipation, he waited, hoping that the fortunate moment would soon arise. Shortly thereafter, Narottama's father and his men went to Gauda for business. Narottama seized the opportunity. He somehow managed to trick his mother. Then he received the guard watching over him and quickly left his home secretly. In fear of being caught, Narottama did not visit Navadvipa, but started towards Vrindavan through the woods. He disguised himself in such a way that no one could identify him. For 15 days he ran at random, then heaved a sign of relief. The miserable condition of Narottama's parents were beyond description. Narottama became the talk of Gauda. Prince Narottama must have gone to Vrajapur. He must be the Narottama whose Prabhu had called for in Ramakeli village. The strength of mind he has manifested is not known to an ordinary man. In this way, Narottama became very popular in that town. Nityananda, Advaita, and other favorite associates of Sri Chaitanya always thought of Narottama's well-being. It is said that he who was fortunate enough to have seen Narottama could forget his fear of material life. Narottama undauntedly passed through the main roads now. Who can describe Narottama's sincere efforts in serving the Lord? Traveling along the road, he sang the glories of Gauranga with continuous streams of tears rolling down his face. Those who just once look upon the face of Narottama attain peace of mind. The villages which Narottama selected to hold at each night became blessed by his presence. Whether male or female, anyone who kept company with Narottama during his journey would comment softly among themselves about the wonderful characteristic of Narottama. Even the golden champaka flower would become ashamed to see the beautiful color of this young man's complexion. Look at his beautiful face and big eyes, how superb his nose, cheeks, eyebrows, forehead, and ears are. Someone else said, look how long his hands are and how broad his chest is. Who are the fortunate parents of this extraordinary man with such beautiful knees and feet? Someone said, he cannot be an ordinary human being, he must be a demigod or a son of a king. Another person remarked, alas, how sad it is that such a young man has become apathetic toward family life. Others said, we wonder how his parents are living without him. Five to Providence, who has no mercy for this boy and has dragged him out of his family at such a young age. The people were lamenting that such a beautiful young man escape from all the joys of material life. Little do they know that it was not better than hell for him. He was experiencing the joy and the happiness way beyond any materialist could think of. Not the happiness that no money or woman or fame or anything in this world could compare to. But materialistic people know nothing else to compare to, so they will think, oh, he became renunciate, he kind of wastes his beauty and youth on God knows what. Being extremely moved by Narottama's presence, no one wanted to return to their houses. They brought many things for Narottama to eat and offered him a comfortable bed to sleep on, but Narottama could not eat or sleep. He spent the night in Sankirtana. Everybody felt sad to see the body of Narottama smeared with dust. In the morning, the villagers did not want to let him go, but Narottama begged their leave. This was the normal scene which occurred daily along his journey to Vraja. Narottama stole the hearts of everyone he met. Within a short time, Narottama visited all the holy places and at last, with an enchanted mind, entered Vrindavan. First of all, he went to visit Vishram Ghat in Sri Mathura, where he bathed in the Yamuna and took some rest. In the solitude of the night, he began kirtan there. At that time, great Vaishnava resident of Mathura came there carrying many varieties of Krishna Prasad and affectionately fed Narottama. Narottama asked him about the well-being of Vraja. With a pierced heart, the Brahmana informed him of the demise of Raghunatha, Kashishvara, Rupa and Sanatana. On hearing of the disappearance of Rupa and Sanatana, Narottama fell on the ground crying. Striking his head on the ground, he called out, Kashishvara Pandita Shri Bhata Raghunatha. Tears streamed from his eyes like a river and he was about to faint. We know that Narottama Das Thakura also in this sentiment he wrote this song, Jayanila Prema Dana, describing the separation from Vaishnava, from the Lord, from his associate, and how he wanted to break his head against the rock. Right? So this is what he felt when he heard about the disappearance of great associates of the Lord. In Narottama's dream, Rupa, Sanatana, Kashishvara, and Raghunatha appeared before Narottama. Narottama at once fell on their feet. All of them embraced Narottama and soaked him with their tears. They spoke sweetly to Narottama, some of which the Brahmana could hear with great. So this is all happened, right? And they kind of unmanifested to the eyes of this Madhura Brahmana, but as they spoke, he could hear something. With great satisfaction, they showered their blessings upon Narottama and then disappeared. Narottama was unable to tolerate their disappearance. He began to lament, gazing desperately in all directions. The Brahmana was astonished to see Narottama's condition. He hastily took Narottama in his lap and tearfully spoke sweetly to him, thanking him for his purifying association. After considerable time, the Brahmana's emotion cooled, and he begged Narottama to come to his house in the morning. Narottama bowed before the Brahmana and requested him to let him go. Please be kind to me and let me go, for I am dying to see the feet of Goswamis. Please be merciful and help me to fulfill my desires. With tears in his eyes, the Brahmana affectionately took him in his lap and blessed him. He accompanied Narottama for some distance, but due to his old age could not walk further. Thus he gave Narottama direction to reach Vrindavan and ordered one man to assist Narottama in his journey. After Narottama's departure, the Brahmana, with a broken heart, stood staring at the path. While walking, Narottama began to sing, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has brought such a low and qualified man as me here to serve to the sacred land of Vrindavan. He has sent me to the abode of mercy, Srila Kanat Goswami Prabhu. Will he accept me as his servant? Will I be able to hold the lotus feet of Sri Gopala Bhatta, Sri Bhugarba Goswami, Sri Jiva Goswami, and others on my head? Will they show their mercy to a worthless man like me? Srinivasa Acharya, who is the embodiment of love, will he love a poor soul like me? Thinking in this way, his eyes filled with tears, his body trembled uncontrollably, and he was unable to walk a single step further. Meanwhile, on the same night that Narottama entered Vrindavan, Srinivasa suddenly became overwhelmed with joy for no apparent reason. He took this as a good sign, and tears of love began to fall from his eyes as he thought, I'm probably going to meet a very dear friend. In eager anticipation, he began kirtana and continued on throughout the night. However, late into the night, he fell asleep. In his dream, Sri Rupa Goswami appeared before him saying, O Srinivasa, in the morning you will meet Narottama. Thus speaking, he disappeared. In the morning when Srinivasa awoke, he rushed to meet Srila Jiva Goswami and revealed his dream. Srila Jiva Goswami was very happy to hear the news, as he had been in great anxiety, waiting for Narottama's arrival. He told Srinivasa, previously Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told me about Narottama and I have already told you about him. This is that Narottama for whom we have been waiting for so long. Saying this, Srila Jiva Goswami hurried off to the temple of Sri Govinda and Srinivasa happily returned to his house. Suddenly a person approached Srinivasa and informed him, a prince has come from Gouda. He is a young man with beautiful features and his body is soaked with tears. I cannot describe the wonderful emotions of that man after observing the face of Sri Govinda. Crying incessantly, Srila Jiva Goswami took him in his lap and welcomed him with sweet words. He sent me to bring you to that place. Hearing this, Srinivasa could not control his emotion and began running to the temple of Govinda. Srinivasa was overwhelmed to at last see Narottama. Like a poor man who has gained a priceless gem, Srinivasa rushed to embrace Narottama. What Srinivasa expressed to Narottama through his embrace, I am unable to describe. Nor can I explain with one mouth how Narottama felt upon meeting Srinivasa. Everyone began to whisper about the uncommon friendship between Srinivasa and Narottama. They became such close friends that one could hardly differentiate one from the other. Sri Govinda had at last fulfilled the desire of Narottama. Sri Krishna Pandit, the head priest of Sri Govinda, brought the garland worn by the deity for both of them. It should be noted that Sri Krishna Pandit was a great scholar and intimate associate of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. After the demise of Kashishwar Pandita, Sri Krishna Pandit became the head priest of Sri Govinda. Everyone knew that Sri Krishna Pandit had great love for Narottama. Narottama humbly bowed to the feet of Sri Krishna Pandit. Sri Jiva Goswami quickly took Narottama to the solitary hermitage of Sri Lokanath Goswami. They found him alone in a secluded place, where he had been suffering the misery of separation from Rupa and Sanatana. Sri Jiva Goswami bowed to his feet and slowly told him about Narottama. Lokanath had been restlessly waiting for Narottama to come. Now, seeing Narottama before him, Lokanath began to float in the ocean of tears. Narottama fell at the feet of his spiritual master, and Lokanath placed his feet on Narottama's head. With sweet words, he assured Narottama that after a few days he would initiate him. Again and again, Lokanath asked Sri Jiva, please help him to establish his grasp of devotional books. To Srinivasa he affectionately said, always make sure that he is properly situated on the path of devotion. Thus speaking, Lokanath uttered the name of Rupa and Sanatana and extracted a heavy sigh. Observing Goswami, Srila Jiva was unable to check his tears. Srila Jiva took his leave and left to take darshan of the lotus feet of Sri Radha Vinoda. Thereafter, Srila Jiva Goswami took Narottama to meet Gopala Bhatta Goswami. He was also sitting alone in a secluded place, cultivating the memories of Srila Rupa and Sanatana. I have no words to accurately depict the sweet relationship between Srila Gopala Bhatta and Srila Sanatana Goswami. This has been described in one shloka. I worship Sri Gopala Bhatta Goswami, whose heart is filled with love for Sanatana and the friendship of Sri Rupa. He who worshipped them is able to obtain mercy of Gopala Bhatta. I worship Sri Gopala Bhatta, whose life and soul is Sri Radharaman. Sri Jiva Goswami bowed to the feet of Gopala Bhatta Goswami, who was very happy to meet Narottama. Narottama fell at his feet, and Goswami at once showed him great affection, warmly embracing Narottama and soaking his body with tears. Srila Jiva and Narottama offered their obeisances and went for darshan of lotus feet of Sri Radha-Ramana. They also went to the temple of Sri Govinda, Gopinath and Madana Mohana. While conversing together, they entered the temple of Sri Gopinath, and Sri Jiva introduced Narottama to Sri Madhu Pandit. Narottama immediately touched the lotus feet of Sri Pandit. Sri Pandit affectionately held Narottama to his bosom and brought him to see Sri Radha Gopinath. He gave the garland which had decorated the deity to Narottama. Sri Jiva Goswami then took Srinivasa and Narottama to the house of Sri Bhugarbha Goswami, a great scholar and inseparable associate of Sri Lokanath Goswami. He always spent his days in remembrance of Mahaprabhu. Sri Jiva Goswami introduced him to Narottama, who at once touched the feet of Goswami. Bhugarbha Goswami embraced him very lovingly. After bowing to his feet, Srila Jiva returned to his house with Srinivasa and Narottama and brought them before Sri Radha Damodar. Narottama was overwhelmed with love at the sight of the deity. How can I describe Narottama's state of mind upon seeing the tomb of Srila Rupa Goswami? Tears streamed down his face, and he rolled on the ground. Gradually his body became still, and there was no sign of heaving. Srinivas quickly took him in his lap. Srila Jiva pacified him and took him to the cottage. Srila Jiva then received a message to go quickly to Govindaji temple. Thus he, Srinivas and Narottama went to the temple and observed the Raj Bhoga Arati of Sri Govinda. After respecting Mahaprasad, they returned to Srila Jiva's cottage. There they spent time discussing topics related to Krishna Later they went to the temple of Sri Madanamahana and observed the Udhapavana Arati of the deity. Sri Jiva then introduced Narottama to everyone there. Since Sri Madanamahana, Narottama became overwhelmed with love. Forgetting himself, he wept incessantly. The Goswami priest lovingly gave him the garland which had decorated the deity. Srila Jiva then took him to the tomb of Sanatana Goswami. One mouth is incapable of describing the emotions of Narottama upon observing Sanatana tomb. With great affection, Srila Jiva pacified Narottama and brought him to his cottage. There he put Narottama into the hands of his dear Srinivasa. With great happiness, Srinivasa bowed to the feet of Srila Jiva and started for his cottage with Narottama, where they spent the entire night discussing topics related to Krishna. In the morning, they bathed in the Yamuna and worshipped the Lord. With joyful minds, they went to Sri Jiva Goswami, who immediately sent them to Radhakund. After observing the beauty of two kundas, they went to the place of Sri Dasa Goswami, and Srinivas cautiously introduced Narottama to him. Though Dasa Goswami had been in a miserable state of mind due to separation from the Lord and his devotees, he suddenly became very happy. "Where is Narottama?" Saying this, he opened his eyes. Narottama bowed to his lotus feet. Being affectionately moved, Dasa Goswami showed his mercy upon Narottama. Narottama was then introduced to all great scholars there. Srila Raghava Pandit, who has been living at Govardhana, was extremely happy to see Narottama. Srinivasa and Narottama finished their travels to all the sacred spots and then reported back to Sri Jiva. Without delay, Srila Jiva happily began to educate Narottama. During his studies, Narottama won the hearts of all with his sensitive and scholastic explanations. Who can understand the heart of Narottama? His service attitude towards Lokanath Goswami was beyond compare, and Lokanath Goswami was extremely pleased with his beloved disciple. One day, observing Narottama's eagerness, Lokanath fulfilled Narottama's long-cherished desire and initiated him into the chanting of Mahamantra. Everyone in Vrindavan was greatly impressed by the depths of Narottama's understanding of devotional scriptures. Thus, to everyone's pleasure, Srila Jiva Goswami conferred upon Narottama the title of Sri Thakura Mahashaya. All the Mahantas were filled with joy, and Narottama's fame rapidly spread throughout Vrajapura. The practice of Manasa Seva in Vrindavan was first started by Narottama. This episode had been described in Bhakti Ratnakara. Please listen attentively as I describe how Narottama again returned to Gauda. I, Narahari Das, continue the narration of Sri Narottama Vilasa. So this was the second Vilasa, and of course we could continue. This is pure nectar, but we will continue, and we'll continue to read more about Narottama Das Thakura in his appearances and disappearance days. Of course, I encourage everyone to read this in their own time. It's a beautiful and heart-melting stories of Narottama Das in Narottama Vilasa, Prema Vilasa, and in Bhakti Ratnakara. Those are the books which primarily describe Narottama Das, the life of Narottama Das Thakur Srinivasacharya Shyamanand Nampani. Of course, also we know that Sitala Mataji, Srila Prabhupada's disciple, she compiled a book on Narottama Das Thakur, and I assume she even found more sources of his life. I think anybody who wants to dive deep into the pastimes and character and life of Sri Narottama Das Thakur would be immensely benefited by reading her book. This is, I think, for me it was a very purifying experience to just read this very elevating experience, and I hope for you it was also elevating to hear this this fragment of the story of life of Sri Narottama Das Thakur, of his character, of his love for the Lord and his renunciation. And this is why we want to use these days of Vaishnava Acharya's appearance, disappearance, to purify our hearts, to read about them and invoke their mercy. So we could pray to Narottama Dasa. Even today, though his appearance day was yesterday, but those who, like me, spaced out to observe it, it's better to observe it one day later than don't observe it at all. And we can pray at the lotus feet of Narottama to develop even a fragment of his love and renunciation, and give us the strength and intelligence to get absorbed in his prayers, and his books which he left, Prema Bhakti Chandrika and Prarthana, and pray that those prayers, those songs change our hearts, and our heart become attached to the service of Lord Gauranga, his associate, and of Radha and Krishna. So that's all for today. Shil Narottama Das Thakura ki jai, Shil Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanande Hari Bol. Hare Krishna. If you found this video inspiring, please like it and subscribe to the channel, because we're putting the videos like this every single day. Hari Bol.